This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and say hello to my little friend. This is the Samsung Galaxy S10e. That's the smaller one, but not so much the lesser one, except for in price. Look at it now. So the S10e might have a kind of different name. Obviously, there's an E at the end, but that doesn't make it a second-class citizen. And if anybody tries to make you feel that way, well, that is just bull dinky. You just say no to that. Not everybody wants to spend $1,000 and up on a smartphone. Personally, I think $750, which is where this one starts in the United States, is plenty, a lot of money already. The good thing is that you don't feel like you're missing out on all sorts of features that the regular S10 has and the S10 Plus. You've still got the same Snapdragon 855 CPU inside. You have 6 or 8 gigs of RAM. Starting storage is still 128 gigs of storage. You can also go up to 256 gigs of storage and 8 gigs of RAM if you want. Spend another $100 to do that. You've got the same 10 megapixel front-facing selfie camera that you get, along with the O-hole front hole punch display, as you would get on the S10. The S10 Plus that we reviewed as a second depth effect camera to the front. Now on the back, you've got one less camera. You've still got 2 excellent cameras, the 12 megapixel main shooter with dual aperture lens on it, and you have the new wide angle, super wide angle lens that you've got on the S10 and the S10 Plus as well. 123 degree field of view. That is super, super, super wide. What you're missing out on is the telephoto lens, which actually is more equivalent to a 50 millimeter lens in full frame digital SLR speak. So it's kind of more of a normal lens, but the main lens is around 28 degree millimeter field aperture. So you get the idea. So you can say, you know, I can zoom with my feet. And this is true to a certain extent. With the wide angle lens, it's so wide it's almost fisheye. I mean, you cannot back up enough. You probably would back up off a cliff or whatever it is to capture as much of that field of view. So if you think that's a pretty neat feature, good for you, because you're getting that here. The telephoto lens is still useful. I personally would kind of miss it. I like to take object photography, product shots, and portraits of people. And you can see on screen the difference between taking a picture of me with the main lens and with the telephoto trying to fill as much of the frame with me. There's a lot of distortion when you take people at 28 millimeters, which is still kind of wide angle, that main lens. And you know, your friends aren't going to love you so much if you take close-up shots of them without the telephoto lens. It does still have the bokeh effect, though, so that part's nice. If you want to have the blurred background kind of thing, which is nice for portrait shots, you can do that. Something that I think a lot of people probably seem to be quite happy about is the fact that this does not have the curved glass, the sides that wrap around to the edges. So the visual distortion isn't that bad on the S10 and the S10 Plus. You're getting pretty good at that. But the accidental edge touching can still drive you crazy. If that's you, then, well, this is the flat screen phone that you're hoping for from Samsung. That's still at the flagshipy level. Now, I'll tell you one thing that surprised me. I would say that absence makes the memory have happier thoughts. I remember the non-curved Galaxies as being a little bit less slippery on the sides. Not so much, really. I find that the S10e is just as slippery because you have that aluminum frame around the side that's plenty slippery enough. You have Gorilla Glass on the front and the back. The S10e gets Gorilla Glass 5, where the 10 and 10 Plus get Gorilla Glass 6. One of the few quality differences going on. Going back to camera again for a minute, because I know for a lot of you, this will be your only camera. It has all the same tricks that the more expensive models have, including things like I said, the bokeh focus, the panorama mode, slow motion, fast motion, 4K video up to 60 frames per second, and that new steady shot stabilization that's incredibly effective, makes it look like you've got a gimbal when you're shooting video. Wow, really nice there. So, great. Why not just get this? Well, it has a 5.8-inch display, which you'll either love or you won't love. It depends on what you like. This is sort of like the days of old. If a 5.8-inch phone can now be called small. You remember when a phone was a phone and you could fit it in your pocket without stretching and worrying and having it stick out an inch or something like that. Well, this one is really very manageable. It actually is one-handed, at least if you have decent-sized hands. I happen to have very large hands and very long fingers, so I can handle a big phone pretty easily, but a lot of people are not very comfortable with that and don't enjoy a phone that they can't use one-handed. Takes up a lot less space. It does fit in a lot more pockets. It fits in the back pocket without sticking out a whole lot and saying, hey, steal me, or that kind of thing. So you know who you are if you prefer a smaller phone. This is the one for you, obviously. The S10 is 6.1 inches. The S10 Plus is 6.4 inches for display size, and correspondingly, they each get increasingly, obviously, well, larger. The weight is pretty close to the S10, but they're both very light phones. I don't think anybody's going to have any issues with that, and the thickness is about the same. The width gets a little bit wider with each one, and that's part of what makes something feel comfortable in your hand. Not a huge change between the S10e and the S10 when it comes to the width. It's mostly the height that's really the difference. You're getting the same lovely AMOLED, dynamic AMOLED technology with HDR10+. So this is nice compared to the iPhone when you have the XS with the nice OLED displays, and then you have the XR, which goes back to the old LCD display. This one gets you the same quality level. It's lower resolution and lower PPI. It's still pretty darn high, though, in terms of PPI. Yeah. You have to have super duper eyes to really see that difference. And it's a smaller screen, so it makes some sense. But for those of you who do have keen eyes, and I spend a lot of time staring at the phone, I can tell the difference in sharpness, but you have to be looking for it. But still, other than the resolution difference, the rest is great. Super high brightness, very natural colors. If you watch my S10 Plus review, you know they did away with all the different AMOLED photo mode, AMOLED cinema mode, sRGB mode, all those things. And now they just have one mode plus the vivid option, which amps the colors up a bit for those of you who are used to that Galaxy level of color saturation. It looks a little more natural. It looks a little bit warmer, sometimes a little bit pinker, but it's a really good display. And DisplayMate has raved about how the Galaxy S10 family have the best displays on the market right now. I have seriously no complaints. It's a lovely display. So this does not have the in-display ultrasonic fingerprint sensor that the S10 and the S10 Plus has. Instead, it has a side-mounted fingerprint scanner that's embedded in the home button, which is a perfectly brilliant place for it. So you're going to unlock it while you're waking it up at the same time. The only complaint I have is, especially for a relatively small phone, that power button is high up. So even with my fairly large hands, it's a big stretch to reach that button. If you're trying to use it with your right hand, pick it up. The left hand, it's a bit easier. I also didn't find that it unlocked so reliably, which you could say about the ultrasonic front-facing fingerprint scanner on the more expensive phones. But that one I found after several days has learned and has gotten a lot quicker. So yeah, it's kind of a wash there. Just like the S10 and the S10 Plus, this has a factory-installed screen protector. It is plastic. It is not glass. It's not bad quality. And yes, it really is a screen protector. Samsung has said as much and said they will charge $30 for replacement. Is it a $30 quality screen protector? Not so much. But it was free with your phone. The XE has the usual stereo speakers, and sound quality is pretty much like the regular S10. You've got an earpiece speaker, and you've got a bottom-firing speaker that creates stereo sound. Pretty loud, pretty full, but still, sorry to say, not up there with the iPhone for the amount of bass and fullness. Yeah. Surprisingly, even though it doesn't have the curved display, it still has the Edge apps, which started way back with the Edge family of phones in Samsung land. You still have it here, and it's still actually pretty easy to activate if you want to have that, so you got the quick launcher for the apps of your choice. You have the same always-on display that it's very customizable, excellent stuff, and you can turn that on and off on the schedule, just like you would with a more expensive Samsung phone. So really, all the features are still here on this phone. That includes all the same wireless radios, Cat20 LTE, NFC, GPS, dual-band Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. You get the idea. And you have Samsung Pay, which supports both NFC payments and the magnetic stripe emulation kind of payments as well. And we have Qi wireless charging, just like we've had. It's the fast charging, and it's bi-directional, so they call it PowerShare at Samsung. So that means you can use it to charge a Galaxy Watch or the Galaxy Buds or even another smartphone if you're willing to give up that much juice to your friends, spouses, whoever's phone that's in need. It has a 3100 milliamp battery versus 3400 for the S10. But battery life is really about the same because you're driving a physically smaller display at lower resolution, so that offsets the 300 milliamp hour difference that there is between the two of them. Battery life is good. It's not class leading. That's what the S10 Plus is for if you don't mind carrying around a big plank of a phone. I'm getting around almost 5 hours of screen on time with brightness set to around 40% or so, which is decent, and it's pretty average among smartphones. Would I personally get this phone? If I wanted a smaller screen phone, I would. I have those giant hands, and I like that big screen for doing things like watching YouTube videos and for gaming, honestly. Mostly, I noticed the difference when gaming. I was playing Fortnite, and I started to feel like my eyes were just crossing after a while. I'm not used to looking at the screen this small. How about the competition, though? This phone obviously doesn't exist in a vacuum. If you do like the curved screen and the typical flagship Galaxy look, there is the Samsung Galaxy S9 from last year, which is now discounted and is certainly at about the same price or less as this phone now too, so keep that in mind. You're not going to get the latest Snapdragon processor, you don't get the wide-angle lens, but I leave that one up to you as to how you feel about that. And you don't get bidirectional Qi charging. I don't think that's going to keep anybody awake at night. Then there's the iPhone XR for those of you who are OS ambivalent, agnostic, whatever you want to call it. The XR feels more like a second-class citizen in Apple's lineup, and it doesn't quite match, if you're okay with both operating systems, the features on the S10e. For example, it has an LCD display rather than having an OLED display. It starts with 64 gigs of storage, half the storage of our S10e. The S10e obviously has the usual Samsung micro SD card slot and a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. You won't get that on the XR. You will, however, get Face ID, and if you watch my videos, you know I do prefer that. I find it to be very seamless. I pick it up, the phone just magically seems to unlock. Some of you who have things like beards don't feel as strongly in favor of it as I do. Take that with a grain of salt. The iPhone has a single rear camera, by the way, and it's IP67 rather than IP68 water-resistant rated. All the Samsung S10e, 10, 10 Plus, they're all IP68, so you can give them a bath for up to 30 minutes and up to 3 feet of water. Then there's a Google Pixel 3, and this one becomes almost a religious difference between some people because Samsung typically has been the antithesis of a Pixel phone. Pixel, very clean, light Android. Samsung, lots of features, lots of software. Of course, Samsung now has the One UI on top of Android Pie. It's a much cleaner, much lighter experience. It's not touch-whizzy at all. It's lovely stuff. I talked about that at length again in my S10 Plus review. So beyond that difference right there and how you feel about that, obviously the Pixel is going to get OS updates faster, probably longer than Samsung, whose track record is pretty moving along slowly when it comes to those things. Pixel has an even smaller screen though, 5.5 inches versus 5.8 inches, and it has a more old-fashioned design. You have bezels, you have a top and bottom chin. I leave that up to you as to how important you feel that is, but I think the Samsung is the prettier phone for as much as that matters. Pixel 3 does have an excellent camera. It's class leading right now among phones, mostly because of Google's excellent image processing. I don't think it's the physical camera that's so much better as their image processing is just stellar. Particularly in night mode, you'll see the difference. The Pixel takes great night shots. However, the Samsung fights back again, and it has that headphone jack and that micro SD card slot, which count for a lot in my book. It has the older Snapdragon 845 processor. Honestly, the difference is not night and day, so whatever. If you're considering any one generation older phone with a Snapdragon 845, don't sweat that one too much. Then there's the OnePlus 6T, which is one of my favorite non-flagship priced phones with a lot of flagship-y characteristics. That starts at $550 with similar storage and RAM as the Samsung. It, however, is a much larger phone. It's meant to compete with the fabulous phablets that are on the market now. So if you're in the market for a smaller phone, there goes that. It does have a very nice OLED display, similar resolution, but not as high PPI because, well, it's a bigger display. The pixels are spread out further. It's not IP68 water resistant. You don't get wireless charging. These are things that you tend to get only when you start spending, sadly, in the 700s and up on a phone these days. And lastly, if you want to go extremely cheaper, we'll be reviewing it. There's the Moto G7. That's about $300. And it does a pretty good job of getting edge to edgy with the display on it, but still, you're not going to get nearly as good cameras if you want the higher end features like the wireless charging and the IP68 and all that sort of thing. And not to mention, that one has a Snapdragon 600 series CPU, so significantly slower. But hey, it's only $300, right? At least we have choices. So that's the Samsung Galaxy S10e. Again, starting price in the United States is $749, which to my mind is still in flagship-y territory, just not in the horrifying $1,000 and up level of, flagship phone pricing these days. But it has all the high-end features you would expect of a flagship. Mostly, it's simply just smaller. Yes, you do get one less camera on the back, but otherwise it has everything else and maybe some things that you don't want. If you don't like the in-display fingerprint scanner or the curved glass on the sides that can lead to accidental touches, well, those things aren't here. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more cool tech videos, smartphones, laptops, tablets, you name it. And thumbs up if you like this vid.